Welcome to Pinnacle's 2025 MLB season preview. This video is all about regular season win totals. We are going to give you our favorite plays on the board when it comes to overs and unders. And you know we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have a ridiculous 103.5 win total right now. I mean, this Dodgers team is loaded from top to bottom. So I promise you want to stay tuned until the very end, because we are going to have a lot of opinions about a lot of these totals that are on the board. I am Anthony Bruno, joined by Ben Barclay and Scott Cullen on behalf of Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for over 25 years, offering the best odds and best payouts in the industry. All right, fellas, before we go around the room and talk about our favorite overs and unders, I want to start with the Dodgers, okay? They are massive favorites to win the World Series, currently priced at plus 275 at Pinnacle. Their win total is out of control. 103.5 right now. I just want to get everyone's take, and I'm going to put everyone on the spot. We'll start with Scott. Are you going over or under 103.5 on this Dodgers team?
Well, I mean, it's a ridiculous total. I'm still going over because I one of the things about teams that are kind of in it to win it right from the start, like the Dodgers are, I think you can make arguments about the Braves and Mets and Phillies playing that way, is that if there is any need during the season, they will spend the money to address the need. So if, the Dodgers have this loaded lineup and a loaded rotation, and just based on that, I think they should win 105 games or more. But if anything happens to any of the players in there, well, they'll just go out and trade for a player to we need to fill a spot in the bullpen. Oh, we need a starter. And they'll just do it because at this point, money doesn't seem to really matter to the Dodgers. They're looking to win another World Series. And given the talent on this roster, I mean, as ridiculous as 103.5 wins is, I still think they're going to go over it.
All right, fair enough. And listen, it is currently juiced towards the over at minus 126. So Scott is on board with this Dodgers team being a great team. Hard to disagree with that. Ben, where is your head at this 103.5 win total?
My head is on the same page as Scott's. I could only look towards the over as well. And for a lot of the same reasons that Scott outlined. But they won 98 games last season with what was a loaded team. Now I think we're in agreement. This roster this year is even more loaded. And they had a slow start from what I remember last year. April and May, I mean, they didn't start bad or anything like that, but they were kind of just treading water around 500 early. And then they took off as kind of the weather warmed up, at least where we are. And they could even start slow again, and they still got, 6 games away from this total last year. And again, with the injury part of it, if someone were to go down, especially in the pitching rotation in the bullpen, the way they've just stocked up their pitching with some of the most elite arms in the game, if someone goes down, now Tyler Glasnow is your number 3 starter, your number 2 starter? Like, there are no holes, and if there are injuries, I still think there won't be holes. And like Scott said, if there is one in the lineup or something, they won't hesitate to go out and make a trade to fill that again. They are determined. Money is not an object here. So yeah, I can only look towards the over.
All right, so just when I thought that one of us would go the other way, one of us would differentiate, I am jumping on the bandwagon here. I also like the Dodgers over 103.5 wins at minus 126. It's hard to disagree with any of the points you guys made. This team is absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, I don't think it's crazy to say that this might be the most talented team in the history of baseball. When you go down that lineup, prime Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, who, even though he's getting a little bit older, still putting up great numbers, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Tommy Edman. I mean, it's just insane. And that pitching staff, I'm sorry, but this pitching staff is disgusting. And you guys said it. Like, if one guy goes down, does it even matter? Especially with Ohtani coming back. Now, maybe it's going to take Ohtani a little bit of time to build up and get back to the pitcher that we saw when he was fully healthy. But I mean, it is just unbelievable when you look at this team from top to bottom. And you said it, Ben, like last year they won 98 games. Could they win 101, 102? Yes, it's certainly possible. But based on the roster that I'm seeing on paper, I think this team is definitely going to clear 103.5 wins. So like I said, you can get that right now at Pinnacle, minus 126. All right, so we're all on the Dodgers bandwagon. Let's go back to Scott now, and we're going to start with overs. So give me your favorite regular season win total over on the board at Pinnacle.
Right. Well, I'm going to go to the National League Central for the Chicago Cubs, over 85.5 wins. Now, it's juiced to minus 135, so I'm hardly alone in this opinion. But I think if you look at the Cubs, with the addition of Kyle Tucker, I think that gives them, I guess, the inside track to win the division. And if you're going to win a division, I certainly think you're going to win more than 86 games. In addition to that, I tend to lean this way with my teams, is if they have strong starting pitching, and maybe this is an old-fashioned way to approach it, but like I like what the Cubs have on the mound between Justin Steele, Shohei Imanaga, Jameson Taillon, Javier Assad, Matthew Boyd. Like there's good depth to that rotation, and I think in that division that they are kind of the clear favorites, and being, I'm not positive whether they're going all the way to the World Series, but to win over 85.5 games, I think there's tons of value there.
All right, so Scott is on the Cubs, and we discussed the Cubs in our other MLB season preview video where we were going over World Series futures, MVP, Cy Young. Ben, I know that you're a Cubs fan. I guess, first of all, how do you feel about that Scott's take on your Cubs?
I certainly hope Scott's right there. I do think they're going to be right around the number, and they have no excuses. This division needs to be won by them, especially with adding Kyle Tucker. You maybe only have him for a year. The way they're spending right now, I'm not completely confident that they will go and drop a bag to keep him around. But to segue into my favorite over pick when it comes to win totals, I'm staying in the NL Central, and I'm taking the Milwaukee Brewers to go over 83.5 wins, and you can get that over at plus 107 at Pinnacle. I really think this is too low of a total for what the Milwaukee Brewers have done year after year in this division. Going back on their last 7 seasons, full seasons, I'm not including the COVID 60-game season. They've won 93 games, 92 games, 86 games, 95 games, 89 games, and 86 games. They've cleared this number consistently, and they keep finding ways to get production out of everyone. You look at the lineup, you look at the pitching, you don't know a lot of names unless you're really invested in it. They get something out of everybody. And I like to think of them, the Rays have kind of fallen off a little in the AL, but they're kind of the Rays of the NL. They just develop, it's a pitching factory. They have guys coming out of nowhere who are just flamethrowers out of the bullpen, getting saves and holds. They've survived big losses of star players year after year. They lose Josh Hader. Devin Williams comes in and is one of the best closers in the league. Now they've lost Devin Williams again. I have full confidence of Tyler McGill, his ability to just become the closer there. They lose Corbin Burns the year before too. They didn't miss a beat in the rotation. So until someone proves, and I hope it's the Cubs, as a fan myself, until someone proves they can knock them off and kind of set them back in the NL Central, I think they're going to be able to clear this number with relative ease. And they may not win the division, but I could see them finishing second or third and still finishing with 85 plus wins.
The Rays of the NL. I like that take. All right, Ben on the Brewers. Scott made his case for the Cubs. I am sticking in the National League. I like the San Diego Padres to go over 85.5 wins at minus 110. They won 93 games a season ago. I love this team from top to bottom when you look at their offense, when you look at their pitching staff, obviously anchored by Fernando Tatis Jr., one of the best players in baseball. And the thing with Fernando Tatis, I know that he has an MVP caliber season in him. I know he's dealt with like PEDs and injuries, but I still feel like he's still so young that he's going to have like that just crazy ceiling type season where he probably wins an MVP sometime soon. So when you have an offense anchored by that guy, and then Jackson Merrill, who burst onto the scene last year, Manny Machado, go down the list. Love this pitching staff. I love the power arms on the staff. Dylan Cease, Michael King, bringing in Nick Pivetta, Yu Darvish, even though he's getting up there in age, still very good. There's so many advanced stats I can go and look at across the board in terms of their offense and their pitching staff last year. They were hovering around like the top 5 to 7 in a lot of categories. So here's the thing. Obviously, they're going to play 26 games against the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks this year, which is going to be tough. But if you look at their record against those teams last year, the Padres actually went 15-11 in 26 games against them. Even if they go 500 or slightly below 500 against the Dodgers and D-backs this year, I still think they're going to clear 85.5 wins. I think it's a little bit too low. This is a team that I think is easily capable of winning 90-plus games again, even though they got to go up against the Dodgers, an improved Diamondbacks team, but this Padres team is the real deal. So that's my pick for my favorite over on the board. All right, let's shift now to unders, fellas. So I guess we're going to start sewering some of these teams across the league. Let's start with Scott. What is your favorite underplay on the board at Pinnacle when it comes to win totals?
Well, I guess we're going back to the National League Central, and I've got the Cincinnati Reds under 78.5 wins, plus 110. And I basically I look at the Reds and I see Ellie De La Cruz is really great, and then really no one else who gets me terribly excited on offense, and the pitching staff is sort of a number of guys who are fine, and if you tell me that this team can go and win 81 or 82 games, sure, I guess it's possible. But I also think it's possible they could win 74 games or 77 games. And so given that I think there are some better options in the National League Central, I could see the Reds falling off the pace. And then, that much easier for them to fall in under 78.5.
All right, so Scott, fading the Cincinnati Reds. I will say Ellie De La Cruz, electric talent.
Awesome.
I mean, he is unbelievable. Maybe a sprinkle for NL MVP? I don't know. Maybe I'll think about it.
Not if you're winning less than 78 games.
Who do you like as your favorite under on the board at Pinnacle?
Once again, staying in the NL Central, it's kind of just previewing the entire division here. I'm taking the St. Louis Cardinals under 76.5 wins at minus 109 at Pinnacle. It's a big dip in the number as opposed to last year. They won 83 games last year, but they had a ton of success in wins come in one-run games, where whenever that happens, whether a team's on the right side or the wrong side of that, I always look for regression in the opposite direction. So I do think some of those one-run games will turn into losses for them. They had Ryan Helsley in the bullpen, who's a very good closer in this league, but I think there is a plan, just from everything I've seen from the Cardinals front office going into this season. They are, I don't know if they're calling it a rebuild, a retool. They're not looking to be competitive this year until the end. Sure, they could come out and start well. It's jump ball in the NL Central, as we've said. Could see a scenario where they're in it, but I think their plan, regardless, unless they're just blowing the doors off this win total by like June or July, I think the plan is to sell at the deadline. So I could see them moving a Helsley, the remaining pieces in their lineup. They've already actively reduced their payroll and they're trying to do it more. So, and I think the line to dipping down so much is a big indicator that this could be one of the worst teams in the NL. So I'll be betting on that. And it makes me happy as a Cubs fan to make that bet as opposed to the Brewers over. So,
well, if you're a fan of a team in the NL Central, this is the video for you, because this video has turned into a very comprehensive breakdown of the NL Central. I am going to move out of the NL Central, and I'm going to go back into the American League, and I need to discuss my Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, I am a Blue Jays fan, but I am taking the Blue Jays under 78.5 wins at plus 125 right now at Pinnacle. They are coming off a 74-win season last year, and I will admit, I think this team has improved. Obviously, they brought in Anthony Santander, Andres Jimenez, Max Scherzer. Those are all upgrades. That all of those additions should make this team better. However, you could still make the argument that they're the worst team in the AL East. The Yankees, I know they've lost Garrett Cole to Tommy John surgery, but they're still good. The Red Sox are good. The Orioles are really good. Maybe one of the best offenses in baseball. And then the Tampa Bay Rays, they figure it out every season. They always find a way to hover around. So I think you could still make the argument that the Blue Jays might be the worst team in the division. Here's the thing. Things could go south for this Blue Jays team, and they could become sellers at the deadline. So you have this Vladimir Guerrero Jr. situation hovering over the team. Yes, they could sign him at any point, but maybe he's going to play out the season and walk. Maybe they get to a situation where they might have to trade him, which is... I don't even want to think about that as a Blue Jays fan. It's the same thing with Bo Bichette. He's also in a contract year. You go down the list and you look at all their unrestricted free agents. You know, I talked about Guerrero and Bichette, but you got Chris Bassett, Max Scherzer, Chad Green, and Eric Swanson in the bullpen. So if this team does not get out to a good start, things could go south very quickly and they could just start selling a bunch of guys. And I think that there's more of a chance of that happening than maybe people think. So I think there's actually a little bit of value on their under 78.5 wins. The other thing with Guerrero, and we talked about Guerrero in our futures video going over AL MVP, he can definitely have an elite season, but he's only had 2 elite seasons, or what I would call elite seasons, in his first 6 years in the league. Outside of that, he's had 4 very mediocre seasons. So what Vladdy are we going to get this year? That remains to be seen. And then the same thing with Bo Bichette. He is coming off a dreadful 2024. What's Bo Bichette going to do this year? Then you look at George Springer, who looks like he's fallen off a cliff. Kevin Gausman and Chris Bassett both had down seasons in the starting rotation. What are they going to do? Those guys are aging players as well. So I think even though the Jays have made some upgrades, and I especially like them bringing in Anthony Santander, they've desperately needed a left-handed power bat, but I could see things going south and then this team becoming sellers at the trade deadline. So sorry, Blue Jays. I'm taking under 78.5 wins. And one last stat that I'll mention, the Jays were awful against the AL East last season. They went 21-31 in 52 games, 10 games under 500 against the division. We could see a similar record this season. As I mentioned, they might be the worst team in the division once again. So that's my take on the Jays. Anyone have any takes on the Blue Jays, out of curiosity?
Well, I enjoy feeling your angst about them, Anthony, as you run down the entire lineup about how terrible they are. But, you know, I like Ben's point, actually, about the Brewers being the Tampa Bay Rays of the National League Central, because for years I would want to take the under on the Rays, and because I would look at their lineup and be like, I don't see how they're going to do it. And then they would always go over the number, so I've sworn that off. But when I look at the Jays and I see there is improvement there, but your points about they could be sellers, like if they don't get off to a good start, you could totally see this team just trading, and all of a sudden they would just, you know, crash into the end of the season. So that's a very fair point when you're looking at futures, is that understanding the contract situations and whether, you know, there's a month or two into the season, they're going to be making the decision that, okay, we're out. And if your team suddenly decides they're out, well, it's really tough to predict them to win games.
How about you, Ben? Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, the Jays, I'm pretty torn on the win total. I could see them winning, and like, if I could bet on them winning like 75 to 80 games, I'd bet that. I think Bichette's going to have a bounce back year. I still think it's a little bit more of an outlier with the injuries last year. This guy's not far removed from leading the league in hits for multiple seasons. I don't think he'll be an issue. Santander should provide more protection too for Vlad and him too. The bullpen does worry me. Like, is Jeff Hoffman closing games now? He had a nice year in Philly, but how is he physically? Chad Green. And then the age of the rotation too. It looks deep and nice on paper, but it is older now. And Bowden Francis, is he going to resume where he was to finish last season, where he was on a tear, or we haven't seen him put it together for an entire summer? So a lot of question marks there. I won't be betting on them personally, but I'm fascinated to see how the season will go. And year after year we say it in the AL East. It's just tough to. It sucks that they're in probably the most loaded division once again. Well, in the AL at least. Like, there's no easy routes to get to the playoffs when you're in there.
Things never change with the AL East. Year after year after year, it is always the best division in baseball. Maybe there's a couple other divisions that could battle for that title, but the AL East looking very formidable again. Listen, even though I'm a Jays fan, I still think it's one of the most fascinating stories of the season, given this Guerrero contract situation. You know, he wants between like $500 and $600 million coming off of what we just saw happen with Juan Soto getting $765 million. So it's going to be one of the most intriguing storylines, I think, to follow all season long. All right, that is going to do it for our regular season win totals episode. Hope you enjoyed that. And like I always say, if you are betting on win totals or any futures for the 2025 MLB season, make sure you are heading to Pinnacle Sportsbook because you are going to get the best odds and best payouts in the industry. All right, that's going to do it. Best of luck with all of your bets heading into the 2025 MLB season. Can't wait to see how some of these storylines play out with the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Blue Jays and some of the new faces in new places. So best of luck with all your bets. And remember to bet smart and bet Pinnacle.